As long as it's up, I know.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jaquise Moore. I am the host of this awesome page, Learning with Jasmine. It has been a long, long time that we've actually been here, but that is okay. Um, and I just want to say that I am super excited about this show because um, it's always it's always it warms my heart to hear about so many other individuals that are advocates who definitely um, tell others about their journey, just like I have. So those who do not know, my daughter has autism, and she's 9 years old right now. She was diagnosed at age 7, and it's such a joy to always have to meet other families, to meet other individuals that understand, know, like me, what it means to have a child or even themselves that may have autism or any type of diagnosis. For me, I have dyslexia. So that's, similarities in as far as just being on the IDEA spectrum. But it's so interesting how Lori and I have connected, and it's been such a joy to know her. So I was wondering if you guys can definitely share this, please, and let people know that we are live. And if you don't can't come on right now, definitely come back and listen to it. So if you can please introduce yourself, and we will get started.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. And my name is Lori Jane Trigg Edwards, and I'm a Montessori teacher for preschool. Also,
Oh,
also that's the love of my life. And I'm also a nanny and a tutor and a caregiver for children on the spectrum. So I've been on the Lassen County, California Community Advisory Committee, and that was to help bring awareness to the community and also to bring speakers and conferences to a very small town, kind of a grassroots starting out kind of a level. And
mhm.
I really enjoyed that. I am also on the spectrum, and I grew up in 9 foster homes because mostly I think because people didn't quite know what to do with that at the time. Um, and we've learned so much over this last period of time, so that we have
Yeah.
a lot more skills and things that we know how to help. And then it wasn't even a diagnosis, different levels of the spectrum.
Hmm.
So I fostered over 100 children that have come through my home, and some of them were also on the spectrum. And I am the parent of 3 adult children, ages 21, 23, and 30. And they are neurodivergent, all 3 of them. 2 of them are autistic, and one of them is considered borderline, which isn't really a diagnosis, but that is the diagnosis that they gave,
Hmm.
with some sensory issues,
Hmm.
ADD, anxiety, depression, panic disorder, agoraphobia, and some social issues. So checked a lot of the boxes, but not all of the autism boxes. Um, so that's where I'm coming from in terms of experience or my life. If you're ready, I will tell you about how this all began.
Yes, please. We are definitely here. And for those who do not know, it is a safe place. I know this is a live show, but it's a safe place. Why? Because um, this page, Learning with Jasmine, started off with me just venting. Okay, just me venting, and people were like, "Oh, can you vent some more?" And I'm like, "What?" you know. But it is a safe place because there's so many families who, um, you know, thinking that they're the only one. only one in this same situation. So I say this is a safe place. This is a time that we are dialoguing, we're having conversations, we're doing whatever. And so definitely I'm going to let you know that, Lori, we are definitely here for you. And in between the times, I was to say commercial break just for you to, get your go to the next part of your piece, but I definitely want to let you know that we are here for you and for anyone who are listening, and so we're definitely going to tie into the story, and we're going to also in the story we're going to bring awareness to those who do not know about autism and ADHD and whatever else that Lori is talking about. And then at the end of the show, we're going to give encouragement to the parents, you guys, and so please stay tuned. So Lori, definitely you can go right ahead.
Okay. Well, I started off with my 2-year-old son. His behavior, mannerisms, quirks, if you will, seemed unusual, and they didn't seem to coincide with my experience as a preschool teacher. He just seemed not in line with anything that I had seen.
Mm-hmm.
And so it caused me to think that maybe something was amiss. So I think our first doctor visit regarding that was with a neurologist. And on that particular day that I called to make that appointment, he lit the kitchen on fire. He flooded the bathroom. Sorry. He locked me out of the house. He beat me with a rope. He beat vegetables against the stereo until they were pulp. He put a hand mixer down his pants, and he came at me with a meat cleaver. So you can see by that, that's not your average 2-year-old. And I felt very alone. My husband was in the military and always away. And I didn't know what to do. I got the appointment with a neurologist, which took forever, as anyone who's dealt with this knows that it doesn't work on your time. It works on theirs. And that could take months. And they told me it would be about 4 months before they could see me. And at that moment, my child came at me with the meat cleaver, and I said, "Put the meat cleaver down." And the receptionist said, "Did you just say what I think you said?" And I said, "What'd you hear?" And she said, "Put the meat cleaver down." And I said, "Yeah, that's what I said." And she said, "We'll get you right in." And right in doesn't really mean right in.
Right now, like right today. Yes.
It didn't mean that, but it certainly meant I didn't have to wait 4 months, which I appreciate. So that was a blessing, I guess, that he came at me at that particular moment. But I took him to the neurologist, and I am sad to say that they told me that there's nothing wrong with him, but there might be something wrong with me for thinking there was something wrong with him. So I left that day thinking, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me that I think there's something wrong with my child? At the same time, knowing full well, this just was not other people's normal days. So I knew that that couldn't be true, what the neurologist said. But I still couldn't help but think, is there something wrong with me that I'm thinking this? In any event, it was a very long road after that. It was 8 long years of just struggling with that kind of thing happening on a daily basis. Being
okay. I'm gonna stop right here. When viewers who do not know on a daily basis, what does that look like as a parent looking at that? Is that a daily, like one time thing, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, or like what does that look like when it says on a daily basis? What can you define that for those who do not know?
I will try. That particular day that I described gives you an impression of what one day, that was in the course of one day. That was not over years time or anything. That was a one-day occurrence. So it could have meant that he stabbed holes in the wall. It could have meant that he tried to harm himself. It could have meant that he would open up the canisters in the kitchen, reach his hand in and spread all the things that were in the canisters all over. That he would, any kind of spray bottles like a deodorant or hairspray or anything, he would just spray them all over until they were empty. It was a full-time job for sure.
Yes.
Watching his every move to make sure that he and I were safe.
And when we say safe, you guys, we literally mean safe. It's like literally, and I can't really describe, how I feel versus someone else's feeling, but we all, I can say, and I can sense Lori's, when you were saying about the meat eater, I'm like, it's literally about, will I be safe? And I have to really talk to you all straight. And I've always have, I was literally scared.
Yeah.
Scared. Okay. And so that's probably hundreds of family members. They're really scared. And not only are they physically scared, but just being mindful, like, where are they, making sure, like, some parents cannot sleep at night right now because if they close their eyes, then they might go outside, so there's when we say safe, it literally means safe. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And he would wake up. I'm not sure if he was sleepwalking or what exactly was happening, but he would get up in the night and he would leave the building. We were in this particular time I'm thinking of, we were in an apartment complex. And he would leave the building, go out the door. He was perfectly capable of figuring out how could he unlock the door. I asked the landlords
and
there.
He was two.
He was two. Yeah. And I asked thanks for pointing that out. And I asked the landlords, was there any way we could put some other special locks on the door up high or something, somewhere where he was less likely to be able to get to reach, anything that could keep him inside, so that I felt like I could sleep, because if I just drifted off, that could be the time that he got out, that he wandered down a hallway, that he went out into a parking lot, a street, etc. And the landlord refused and said no, that we could not do that. We couldn't make any changes to the building. So it was apparent to us that we needed to leave.
To move.
Not that anyone had the finances to just suddenly up and move anytime you like. So this was just kind of par for the course. So so I'm sorry, I probably deviated from where we were, but
no, you're doing what you're doing, the timeline, you're doing everything appropriately, definitely, because it's something about knowing we know, your story is not my story is not your story, but we definitely know how we are feeling and how, what has, happened, but so many other individuals that may be watching this, maybe come across this later on. This will actually be on YouTube on my Learning with Jasmine channel. So it would be other people watching and hearing and may not have known. Bringing awareness to the community has to be real. And I thank you for just doing this. Definitely.
Sure. I wish I had the opportunity to hear other people's stories when I was going through it.
Yes.
I certainly felt alone. And
yes. Okay. Commercial break for that one. Definitely. I literally was just trying to figure out. So for those of you who don't know, Learning with Jasmine is not just this anymore. 2021, it's going to be courses. It's going to be more awareness. It's going to be a lot of Zoom calls. It's going to be a lot of things that are going to be more than just a show. And so for the past 2-3 months, I have been silent for a reason, because I had to build up. I have 5 courses already that's already ready for parents, and I have anyone who want to learn about autism. There will be so many other Zoom calls that will be open for the community. But I literally wrote this on one of my courses. I felt alone. Why? As soon as I found out about autism, about my daughter, the very first thing that the doctor said was, here's 20 appointments, not parent groups, not whatever the case may be. Here's the 20 appointments in one year that you have to have her stick, poke, turn around, do all those things that come along with, just having a diagnosis like that day. And you're telling me in a 1 year, I have to like literally take off of work. I have to do everything I have to do for really for your resource, for your research, and not making me feel like I have that support group. And so Learning with Jasmine is going to be beyond just a show. It's going to be a support group for parents and individuals, teachers who may not know, private schools are not really qualified for our children compared to public school. Why? Because we don't have the resources. There's just a regular teacher, not a special ed teacher in private schools. So any walks of life or your religion, I'm definitely wanting to hook up with you. I really want to go into depth about bringing awareness to the community. So that's where we are. And I definitely understand about how you're feeling, Lori, about feeling alone, feeling loneliness. Definitely, because and nothing wrong with the physicians or whatever, but I really think that I want to tap into the doctors too.
Sure.
Here's the resources in Maryland. Here's the resources in California. Here's the resources in Virginia, and then send it and give it out to parents, because at the same time, we are human. We're gonna have feelings. It's natural. And so in order for us to feel like, okay, this might, take a different shift in my thinking about, oh my goodness, what is going on? A child who has autism, what is this or whatever. But to know then I have somebody who is in my corner. I have someone who I can call. And I definitely want to give out the shout out to a mom who said, I understand. Here's my number. So I will definitely let you guys know. You can always contact me. Always. So thank you, Lori, for saying that, because that's definitely needed. Definitely needed.
I didn't just feel, I did feel alone. I didn't just feel alone in that situation, but I felt alone because having friendships wasn't really going to be a thing either. We had friends, a couple friends that we would normally have gone to their home, and they began asking us not to come over anymore. And if we did, not to bring my child. And I don't know who I was supposed to leave my child with, because if I could barely handle it, then, who was going to watch my child? And I would have felt guilty anyway, leaving him just to go hang out with friends or something like that. But heaven knows I needed it, that's for sure. But we became isolated because no one wanted us around anymore. They didn't want the influence of my child on their children. Trying to keep a job was near impossible, because who was going to watch him? Who was going to watch him while I was working? And whoever I could find to watch him, I would get at least 3 calls a day at my job, my various jobs, which would say, enough's enough. You can't keep having personal calls. You can't keep leaving work. This isn't going to work for us. You have to find another job. So just trying to stay employed what seemed impossible. Trying to care for him. It just was very difficult from that standpoint. So I felt very alone in autism. I felt very alone without friends. I felt very alone that I couldn't seem to even hold a job. It was overwhelming. It was simply overwhelming.
Very overwhelming. And that's why it's so important, you guys, to have this group this support group is so important. So I know I posted it. Here's a side note on this coming Wednesday. I will be one of the facilitators Wednesday at 8:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Zoom. There's a link. I will post again. I will post again underneath this on the Facebook page that you guys can look and go through and go on the ID on the Zoom. I will see you guys this coming Wednesday. It is so important to have that connection with individuals. And even though, again, your story, Lori, is not my story is not your story, but we are in a common ground. Our common ground is our children and having the best care and support system that they need, definitely.
Absolutely. And then I don't know, academically or such was difficult as well. He was very gifted, if you will. And so school didn't work out because he would correct the teachers. He knew more than I knew. He was doing physics at 6 years old, more than I could certainly do. I didn't have a 4-year degree. So I felt in over my head as far as even my child seemed more academic than I did. The schools were saying things like, we don't know how to help you. Maybe you should take him home. There was a lot of off the record kind of comments, like, off the record, there's nothing we can do for him. We don't know. We're in over our head. Maybe you should just take him home. There were times where schools told me they felt unsafe with him at their school, that the parents felt unsafe with my child there around their children. That was difficult to hear. And we did indeed end up, sometimes he was homeschooled, sometimes chartered, sometimes special ed, part-time, full-time, sometimes with an aide in the classroom. We tried literally everything.
That sounds like a yo-yo, tennis going back and forth. I definitely understand about that. Yes.
I know when people are trying to be helpful and they'll make a suggestion, and I probably should learn to be more gracious with suggestions, but sometimes it feels like when they give a suggestion, it's like, don't you think I thought of that?
Right. See, for Lori, for you and your child, he did those things at somebody else's house, or he did those things at school. Jasmine wouldn't do those things. So even though we were going back and forth with different programs, I did hear, I cannot help you. I cannot help your child, in any capacity that come along with. And she did not have any tantrums at school. She did not have anything like that. It was just the academic. But again, it's for Jasmine, is not just autism, it's global development delay. And for the global development delay, they feel what their environment is. And so I think, and also she is shy. So I think for her, and she, I guess, pretended like she didn't know, or she didn't understand, or she didn't want to talk. I don't know what the case may be, but then at home she would tell me everything. Right. She would tell me everything. But they were like, we can't help you. We need for you to go to a different classroom or different program. And then she would tell me everything, what that person did, what that person said. And I'm like, why don't you say that at school? But she wasn't comfortable. Right. But I definitely heard those things like, we cannot help you. And that, to me, is one of the worst things that you could say to a parent. Right. And we have, actually, I didn't realize that you and I were preschool teachers. And I was working in childcare centers. And those are things that I was like very cautious of what to say to parents. And that was way before I became a parent. There's certain things that you just don't say to parents. Even if you think it, don't say it to parents because you don't know the impact,
Right.
you know, like I'm like, well, you need to give me suggestions. And they can't give me suggestions when I don't need for you to say anything to me. Because that's just totally wrong. But I definitely understand what you're saying.
I also had the opposite where they would say, there's nothing wrong. We don't know what you're talking about. He had a fine day at school. Well, he might have looked like he had a fine day of school, but then he came home and for 2 hours would tell me all the things that went wrong and how his day was horrible and how he wanted to kill himself. So their idea of everything is fine is not what everything is fine. And then when I would say, well, here's what's happening, at home, what he's telling me, then it was, well, maybe you have a problem at home. We don't have a problem at school. And that wasn't it. It was, he was uncomfortable telling them what his issues were. Once he got home, he was comfortable. Then he could relax and vent and tell me all the things that didn't go well and how his feelings got hurt and different things that happened and what was frustrating. And but he didn't say any of those things to them, and they didn't know the cues to know expressions on his face or anything like that to know anything was awry. So they think everything is fine when it's really not.
I definitely understand about that. The cues in the face, I definitely, and that's for the parents to definitely study your child when those moments come. For Jasmine, it was, one classroom, she wasn't smiling at all. That was your cue right there. But in the next classroom, she was smiling, and the teacher was like, I wondering why she's not smiling in my classroom.
Yeah.
It is the environment, right. She's right. 5 years old and there's nothing wrong with in the sense, there's nothing wrong with programs like Our Children in the sense, I'm being respectful because there's so many individuals that just need our programs. Absolutely. And there's, but when you have a 5-year-old and then you have someone who is like 2 years old in a classroom, there's a big difference.
Sure.
And so a 5-year-old's asking for a bottle at home. Well, that's why, because she's been hearing the word bottle all day. So, I mean, respectfully, you transition to another classroom that have all 5-year-olds. Yeah, she's going to smile a little bit. She's going to be more engaged in because her environment is different. Her environment is, oh, well, I don't look like a 2-year-old. I look like them. I look like a 5-year-old, so it's something, definitely to be mindful of.
That might be one of the things that drew me to Montessori philosophy. Is one of the philosophies of Montessori is that there's nothing, quote, wrong with the child's behavior. It's the environment that's the issue. So when you have children in the classroom and there's a behavioral problem, the idea isn't that the problem is with the child, it's that the problem is with the environment, and that you need to change the environment to accommodate the child. And
say that again, please say that again.
So the idea in that philosophy would be that if you have behavioral issues in the classroom, it's not the child that is the issue, it is the environment that is the issue. That if you change the environment, then the behaviors then will change as well. So that's probably what drew me in retrospect. In retrospect, that might be one of the things that drew me to that philosophy.
No, that's yes. So before my transition to an actual, as a teacher and all that stuff, and with adults, that was my next move. At first, I was like, I think I should get certified in Montessori, but I didn't. But that's definitely one of the reasons why I was drawn to that. Definitely.
Sure. And of course, I mean, we're not here to discuss Montessori, but one of the things about that is that is that it's at your own pace, that every child at their own pace. And even the same material could be used by a 2-year-old, could also be used by a 6-year-old. They would just use the material in a different way based on their needs and abilities and that sort of thing. So,
Right.
we're all not the same. And teachers, as try as they may, often classrooms are overcrowded and they have so many children that they have to get to, and really they have to teach to the center, to the middle. And those that are above the middle and below the middle have a hard time getting their needs met, and that is unfortunate. I don't necessarily think that it's a teacher's fault. I'm by no means blaming teachers.
Right. We're not. We're definitely not. However, we do know that there is some type of pattern at times that may be based upon so many walks of life, right? But the simple fact that there is children in a classroom that adults, parents, teachers, specialists need to focus on the individual, the whole child, definitely the whole child. And even though, and this is for me, I was in special ed because I had a speech delay. I have this dyslexia and so many, I just stutter. So I definitely understand about even in the classroom or pulled out or whatever the case may be, in the classroom, teachers need to focus on the whole child. And then even though there's a diagnosis or there's a learning disability or whatever the case may be, to focus on their strengths and not their title.
Right.
Definitely.
Absolutely. And that's where they're going to find success for sure.
Yes.
So
tap into your child's strengths, you guys. Tap into it. That means draw it. You know, Jasmine loves to dance, so she's in a dance class. She loves to sing, so she, we're always on Zoom singing. She loves to play the piano, so she's in a piano class. Tap into what your child loves to do. And that way, they will feel confident in themselves. They will feel like they are belonging in this world, this crazy world, but they belong in this world and they feel like, oh, I matter. Definitely.
Absolutely. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. 8 years later of 8 years of all that struggle. 8 years later, like I said, we tried everything. And he was diagnosed bipolar. He's not bipolar, but he was diagnosed bipolar, and he was on lithium for 2 years. Such a high level that he was a zombie is the only way I can describe it. And then I had lots of people outside of my family, and maybe even in my family, that said, why are you doing this to your child? You've turned him into a zombie. And I just kind of felt like, I don't know, I'm just doing what the doctors say. I have doctors and specialists and therapists and whatever. I'm trying to figure out what to do. And if a doctor gives you a diagnosis, you're thinking, as a parent, who am I to disagree with that? I'm not a doctor. It took me many years to discover I'm not a doctor, I'm the parent. And in many ways, that's more important than the doctor. But I didn't get that at the time. I was passive, and I thought I'm just here to accept whatever you're telling me. And at some point, I had to learn to advocate for my child, and that doctors are not all knowing, though they're very helpful and educated, but maybe not all knowing, and that I can take what they say as a possibility of maybe what to do or what could be. I hate to use that word wrong, but
an education versus experience.
Correct. Correct.
Okay, that's what we're saying, you guys. Great, awesome. Absolutely. Thank you for your service. Thank you for, but it's something about that experience.
Sure.
To me, that's what I'm saying.
And he was, like I said, he was considered gifted to such a degree that at 9 years old, I was told that I should remove him from school and I should enroll him at the college, and that he needed to just get his college degree. And that's an unusual thing. And socially, my husband said, yeah, that's not going to work. We're not going to put a 9-year-old with grown adults. How is that socially going to work out? How is he going to be with his peers? This isn't really going to work out. And academically, those were his peers for sure, but socially, that was not going to be his peers. And the college said, yeah, we're not going to have a 9-year-old just wandering about the college. You're going to have to be with him. You're going to have to go with him to his classes. And by that point, I had 2 other children, and I worked. And so I thought, I'll have to quit my job and then hire somebody to watch my children while I attend school with my child.
Yeah,
and
that makes perfect
Sure.
sense to them.
Sure. And my husband said, this isn't happening. He said, we don't even have our degrees. How are we going to get him his degree before we even get ours? And so that did not happen. There are many times in life I wonder if I should have just sent him to college, but I don't know that there was a way to make that happen. But so when he was 10, I met, oh, that's not true. I'm sorry, 12. When he was 12, I met a similar child in a daycare program that I was working in. There was a child that seemed remarkably similar to my child. And I asked the parent, because it was obvious that there was something amiss. And I asked the child, the parent, if you don't mind me asking, what is the child's diagnosis? And she said, he has Asperger's syndrome. She said it's a rare form of autism, which then it was rare. It is not now, but it was. And she said it's a rare form of autism. And it's a rare form of high functioning autism, is what she said. And all these little bells and whistles went off in my head, thinking when he was 2, I went to the neurologist and said, I think he's autistic. And that was when they said, there's nothing wrong with your child. There might be something wrong with you for thinking that. And that I obviously was way off base. Now, the problem with that is that the year I took him to the neurologist was the year before, 2 years? 1 year, anyway, somewhere within a couple years of Asperger even becoming a syndrome. So it wasn't that the doctor wasn't skilled or versed in knowing Asperger. It wasn't even a thing. So he couldn't very well have diagnosed him with that. I don't think he should have sent me away telling me there was nothing amiss, but in all fairness, he couldn't have diagnosed him correctly because it wasn't even a thing at the time. But in any event, I did take him to get diagnosed and assessed and diagnosed, and they did determine that he did have Asperger's syndrome, which they called a high functioning autism. And they said, here is an email website, I think, whatever it was one support group online. And they said, this is all we can offer you because I said, okay, great, got a diagnosis. What do I do about it? And they said, literally said, there is nothing we can do for you. Here is a support group. That's the best we can offer you. It's an online kind of support group. And it was warm line services. And they said, that's all we can do for you. Because he's high functioning, he doesn't qualify for any of our services. And they didn't offer me any other services or tell me where I could take him. And in all fairness, there might not have been back then. He is 30 years old now. So it's possible that they were telling the truth.
Yeah, that seems, yeah.
It's possible there wasn't anywhere for me to go, short of this online thing. I was not computer savvy and still am not. And so an online thing wasn't really going to be helpful for me to try to get help. Eventually I did access their services, but and I'm sure they're a wonderful support group, but I needed a whole lot more than just some occasional online support. I needed so much more. I know there are a lot of people that don't like labels, and I understand their arguments for it. I don't necessarily agree with them because I found a label to be the most helpful thing of all, actually, because
it is actually the best thing that you could possibly do in this day and age, especially 2021. Parents, I've said this before. it is okay. It will not put you in a position like, am I the, what did I do? Am I a bad parent? No, 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 no. We're not saying that. And we're not saying even if you decide not to, but just think about the opportunities that your child will have when they can have so much more, they can be supported so much more when there is a diagnosis.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people think there's going to be a stigma attached to it, and they
Right.
don't want their child to be stigmatized. They don't want people to think less of their child or think their
Right.
child is not capable of things. And I'm here to say, in my experience anyway, that was not the case. Having a label helped tremendously. It gave us
Yes.
somewhere to start, it gave us somewhere to go, it gave us things to look at, it gave us ways and philosophies and things that had been used before that could help us. They were strategies. And
Mm-hmm.
it was nothing but positive and has always been positive to me. I will jump ahead of myself and say that uh, that I found that I received the most help and
Mm-hmm.
felt the most at peace once I was able to wrap my head around, accept, and be public about the diagnosis, not just for my children, but for myself. I spent so many years trying to work jobs, trying to, I call it pretending to be, quote, normal, that or neurotypical. I didn't want them to know. I didn't want them to think that I was less capable. I didn't want them to worry that I couldn't do the job. I so I kept it a secret, so to speak. And I spent all this time and energy trying to keep it a secret and trying to keep people from knowing. And the moment that I actually embraced it and shared it, I discovered it didn't keep me from getting jobs. It actually helped me get jobs. It helped me keep jobs for sure.
It helped you. It helped you even in teaching, because now you can, it can be more. Oh, okay. Well, I can relate. I can see that. And here's a side note of this. I don't have a master's in special education, but I am a special needs coordinator at a organization right now. Because why? Of my experience
Right.
as a parent, as an advocate, someone saw the need for me to do that. So it's just simple fact that everything is now open.
Yes.
I'm being more aware, even as far as the parent. As a parent, I am definitely learning how, and I love self-care. Like, we have to be so, we always think as parents, we wake up in the morning and we have to be parents, whatever that looks like to you, whether it's, one parent home or two parent home, if it's, in the city and out of the city, whatever it looks like to you, right? Each person. And we do this because we love our child. But then we, at the end of the day, we're exhausted. And I definitely would love for um, for all of us to kind of like think about, like, what does that mean, self-care to us, whatever that looks like, to your family, whatever time that is. If it means the extra 5 minutes in the bathtub, is the extra 5 minutes in the car, whatever the 5 minutes of you know playing music before, whatever it looks like to you, please do it throughout the day, because we cannot take care of our children, whether a child who has diagnosis or not, whether the child has autism or not, whether your child has whatever it is, no diagnosis, whatever it is, we just have to take care of us. And it's so important because at the end of the day, we are the ones who not only will be in our own skin, but in order for us to continue on throughout the day, we have to have that strength. We have to have that peace of mind. We have to, okay, at the end of the day, did I do the best that I could do? as a parent. And what does that look like? So definitely, if you are listening right now and you're like, okay, I see all the signs. I see all the signs. I've been hearing it, I've been seeing it, and I just don't know what to do. The very first thing is definitely have that support group and make that phone call and let professionals know and evaluate. I know we have COVID-19, there's restrictions of that, but definitely jot down all the things that happened today that was, that is a concern. Jot it down. So when you are talking to that professional doctor or your child's teacher, you can actually tell them what you saw, what you heard, and that will open up so many other doors. But definitely, what we know, the best thing to do is to be in the known.
Sure.
For our child, it's so important. And so that is something that I always want to tap into, like what is new, if I'm having a conversation with someone, definitely, asking questions. Those are the things that will help our children grow in such a way that even with the diagnosis, you're like, wow, it's opens up so many doors. Definitely.
Sure. Well, you touched on something there that was important, that I found when I went to get him assessed, and that is record keeping is so important, because I showed up and I didn't have anything. And so when they'd say, what makes you think your child's autistic? And I'd say, I don't know, I just do. Well, that's not going to fly. You're going to need a lot more than that. Yeah. And so that was really awakening for me. This I need to make sure that I'm documenting things that seem unusual or peculiar or different, or maybe not even that. Maybe they're just things that seem like a challenge, anything, and strengths and weaknesses. The fact that my child could do physics at 6, that was something that was important to be able to pass on. It's not just what things go wrong. Sometimes it's the things that go right as well. So
right there, we sometimes focus on just the negative part, but definitely focus on the positives.
Particular skills or abilities or strengths that they have that also will help with diagnosis situations, sensitivities, things like that. That it takes us an hour to get dressed in the morning because the seam on the socks is rubbing his toes, for example. That would be important for them to be able to look into sensory issues. So, but I didn't know that when I went, so I didn't know what to tell doctors. And once I learned that I needed to be making these notations, then I could come to a doctor's appointment a lot more prepared and say, look, here are the 7 signs that I saw yesterday that seemed unusual or that were a challenge for us, that make me think that maybe there's some issue that we could get some help with.
If it takes you about 4 or 5 months or 6 months to get an appointment, FYI, you guys, it is definitely critical to jot down those things, because then you have to wait for another 5 or 6 months. So it's so unfortunate. We are telling you guys from experience. This is what it's all about.
So true. To show up to an appointment and you don't really know what to tell them, and they say, give me examples, and I say, I don't know, I can't on the spot, and they say, well, then I don't know what you want from me. So I learned quickly, I need to make note of it. And sometimes you have teachers that could have made notes, and you could ask them to make notes. And oftentimes that is part of the diagnosis, is that you're given forms to give the teachers, and the teachers can mark what they see. And it's not always don't think that it's always going to be the same. What the teacher sees and what you see can be very, very different.
And I want to say, here we go. If the teacher is saying something to you about your child's behavior, please do not be offended. That right there is your red flag.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's for somebody. I don't know who that is, but that's for somebody. Please do not be offended. And we are both teachers, so we both, but please do not be offended. That's your red flag.
And I've worked at a lot of schools that their policy was that you don't say anything to the parents, that they were worried about enrollment and they didn't want parents to leave. So you just kept your mouth quiet and you didn't tell them when you saw a problem. Well, that's a great disservice to that poor child. How many teachers are going to do that? And at what point is it going to be a problem? And if they could have said something when your child was 2, then they wouldn't have had to wait till 12, like my child, and all those years of struggle and difficulty and social problems of your child's behavior, and then your child trying to make friends and being the odd child, and the behaviors, and parents saying, I don't want you playing with that child, and things like that. So we could have nipped this in the bud a long time ago if maybe a teacher had, said something. That's the case for some people. That's not to say that all teachers have experience in this, and no, that would be my first goal, is that I think all teachers should take a class and should be aware of this, for starters. But so my child, I'm going to backtrack. Sure. And I backtrack a little in that my child, when he was 4 and he was at school, and they were trying to tell me about, they were having difficulty teaching him his letters, they said. Difficulty teaching him his letters. And I said, that's peculiar. I'm not really sure I understand what you're telling me, because he can read. And they said, no, he doesn't know his letters. And I said, no, he could read. Like, you could give him the newspaper and he could read it. And they looked at me like I'd lost my mind. And it's just simply because he didn't cooperate with them. He didn't like them. He didn't like their mannerisms. He didn't like their tone. He didn't like dealing with them. So he just kind of shut them out and didn't really listen to anything they had to share or ask him. And so they just thought he was, uncooperative and refused to learn, was really their take on it. And it's interesting that no, he wasn't. I mean, he was uncooperative, I'll give you that. But it's because he felt like the things they asked him were beneath him. When they said, what's this letter? And he was thinking, what's this letter? And they said, what's this color? And he came home and told me that they asked him what this color was. And they were looking for the answer red. And he wanted to know which particular shade of red were they looking for. And so, so, you just need to be aware. That's why these classes would be really helpful for teachers. I think it should be mandatory, frankly, that they know some signs, some things to look for, things to notice. I had somebody hire me to observe the classroom, to observe particular children that they thought something seemed to miss, but they weren't skilled, and they wanted to know what my take on it was. Well, I'm not a special ed teacher, but I have experience in this, and I know it when I see it, for sure. I'm not a doctor, but I'll tell you, 9 times out of 10, I could give you a diagnosis, even if I'm not a doctor, just from having spent time and understanding it. But I can see the same child that they see, and they didn't notice anything was amiss. Well, because they had a whole classroom full of children, they weren't focused on that one child. So they weren't noticing particular behaviors and how that child handled transitions, or how that child handled social situations, or things like that, or even just little stemming kinds of quirks or things that the child had, or the fact that they don't give eye contact, or just different little things that go by the wayside when you're a busy teacher with a handful of children. And so that was something that they found very interesting. And they said, gosh, we wish that we had some kind of class to know what to look for. And they were wondering, they've been in business 30 years, and they wonder how many children have come through that they were unaware could have been helped at that stage of 2 to 6 year olds. And the earlier the better in terms of
Yes, early
diagnosis and getting help.
intervention. Yes, early
So,
intervention.
so there's that.
But here's a commercial break for those. Early intervention, definitely. If you can go under your state, wherever you are, Learning with Jasmine page, I have it somewhere posted, but it was a while back. But if you are interested, I do have the list on PDF. I can email it to you. But if you can go on your state special education website, you will know about early intervention. Definitely. The earlier the child is, the better, in a sense.
It's never too late.
But it's never too late. Right, exactly. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And I know we're probably running out of time.
We're running out of time, but we can tweak it, because I know
we want to get to some encouraging things.
Yes,
and I do want to get to that, but I will jump ahead to that encouraging part and say that all 3 of my children, I know you didn't get time to hear the ins and outs of the other 2, but
we can do part 2 and part 3 one day. Don't worry. I would definitely. I have to be honest with you, Lori. The first 5 minutes, and this is from, I'm not going to really expose anything of our own conversation we've had, outside of this. We are actually, I think that 5 minutes was both of us, feeling whatever feeling we were having based upon the conversation we've had before, outside of this live. And then after that, we just both began to feel what we're feeling. And so I definitely do appreciate, and I wouldn't mind part 2 and part 3. You just let me know.
I would love that whenever you like.
We can go from that, definitely. But I really want you to tell the parents, give encouragement to you, definitely.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I'll jump ahead.
Okay.
Just a little bit. I'll jump ahead in that all 3 of my children, who I think you got a feel for, they're very challenged for sure. All 3 of them live alone and have full-time jobs. And I know some of you are going to hear that and you're going to say, oh, that's because they're further along than mine, or that's because they're higher functioning. Mine could never do that. I want you to know, with my son, there was a state where we felt like he couldn't draw a circle, he couldn't ride a bike. This is at 12 years old. At 12 years old, he couldn't draw a circle, he couldn't ride a bike, he couldn't tie his shoes, he couldn't do any of those things at 12. There was no reason to believe that his life was going to be any different than that at the time. And I'm just telling you, through lots of effort, lots of effort and time and love and struggle
and patience
he's 30 years old, and he actually held a job longer than I have held a job. So you wouldn't believe that somebody who couldn't draw a circle, ride a bike, or tie their shoes was going to at some point be at that level in their life. Now, he doesn't drive a car yet, that's true. But, like we talked about, there are strengths and weaknesses. He might not ever drive. That might not be one of his strengths. However, he is able to have a full-time job and live on his own. And I guarantee you, I never thought, really, at 12, I was not picturing he would be out on his own. I thought for sure he would always be living in my home, and he would always need me to take care of him. So that's a big deal. I can't stress that enough. Do not give up. Do not underestimate them. Do not think there's no point in challenging them because you don't see any progress. You never know when that progress is going to happen. You never know when it's going to kick in. They could be a late bloomer. You don't know how that's going to work, and you just
And when
don't
it
know.
does,
Right?
when it does, and not even just that big moment, that small moment is still progress, you guys. And when it does, it's gonna shock them. It's gonna be like, oh, I could do this. And so
Right.
even those moments when Jasmine has those moments like, oh, I got this. Like literally, I have taught her, you got this, Jasmine, and I got this. Yeah. It's something about when you encourage your child, but when your child even encourage you, when you see her and you see them progress, when you see those moments of those steps just just going higher and higher, it makes you as a parent feel like, wow, what I'm doing is going to help them later on. Let's focus on the later on and not
Sure.
focus on even just, okay, even though the right now is okay, but the later on, like you were saying, all three of your children are living on their own. Your experiences with them, you said you didn't see that. But at the end of the
Yeah.
tunnel, that's when you saw like, wow, all this was not in vain.
Was not
All of
in
this
vain.
was not, it was not just, okay, I'm doing this because I'm a parent. No, no, no. You're doing this because out of love, out of like you want the best for your children, and then now you can see that. So that's definitely, I think that's what Laura and I are talking about, just focusing on how can my child, and even if it come down to, okay, a child that may still live with a parent, but that moment of when you see something or when you hear something, that is that moment. Celebrate it. Celebrate that moment, because that will give encouragement for the next. And then when you go to the next phase, you're thinking about what happened last week. You're thinking about what happened 3 years ago, and you're looking at, wow, I'm gonna get to the next level. So definitely do not give up. Do not give up. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So true. And to focus on, sometimes I'm not perfect. So sometimes I get down on myself and think I should have done something better. I should have, maybe if I'd have started driving lessons sooner, like what, like, you know, hard on myself. And we are the hardest on ourselves about
Mhm.
what could I have done different or better that could have got them further along, or that sort of thing. And I mentioned this young man that was similar to my child that made me ask about the diagnosis, and we became friends with that family, and we homeschooled with that family. And I thought that mother, I thought the sun rose and set with that mother, and I compared myself to her. I never should have done that. Don't compare. But I compared myself, and I thought, I want to be like her. Why can't I be more like her? She just seemed to have it all together, and she was always positive, and nothing ever seemed to get her down, and she just seemed to overcome everything. And I was like, wow, I wish I could be like that. Well, in time I came to discover, when she gets her child ready for school in the morning at 12 years old, she set him on the counter and she dressed him herself. I was not aware of that. Sometimes what goes on in closed doors, you're not aware of. And so all I saw is she got her kid to school on time. And I thought, how does she do that? I can't get my child up and dressed and out the door on time. Well, because she was dressing him herself. When she said she goes grocery shopping with her son, I thought, how is that possible? We got kicked out of Safeway because he knocked down wine displays because he would spin and knock everything down. And I thought, how does she make that happen? Well, he was 12 years old and she was putting him in the grocery cart and pushing him around in the grocery cart. That's how they weren't knocking anything down. So I'm not here to say who did things right or wrong, but when we look at it, sometimes things are not as they seem. And And that child then, sure, he was able to go through the grocery store and he was able to get to school on time. But I'm here to tell you, he had no surviving skills. He couldn't take care of himself. He didn't know how to even walk through a grocery store. Later in life, his abilities were very slim. He was able to sweep a floor and feed a cat, and that was about the extent of his abilities because everything had been done for him and nothing had ever been expected of him. I'm definitely here to say you have to make accommodations. I'm by no stretch am I saying I made my children do things that were horribly difficult and uncomfortable and miserable and that sort of thing. They do need a little bit of a challenge because they'll rise to the occasion, but they'll only rise so much, so you do have to make some accommodations. But you have to have some expectation. Zero expectation, you're going to get zero. That's what you're going to
and
get.
I wanted to say something that is definitely a struggle even still to this day with Jasmine. And her therapist told me really something that was like, okay, I'm doing something right, is that once they have met the level of expectations, you as a parent have to continue on keeping them up there. So for Jasmine, she knows how to put her pants on. So if she cries her hardest, and I mean to the point that sometimes it breaks my heart, but I do not help her with her pants. Why? Because her high expectations have been met to put her pants on. So that's something that, we as parents got to stay strong, and it will take her almost an hour, and she will do sometimes her most moments of, and I call her moments. I don't, you're having a moment. Okay. I understand because everybody has a moment. It is okay. As long as you don't hit, you don't physically hit me and bite me and pull my hair and destroy the room or whatever. And she has come a long way, and she has slowly but surely, since October, definitely, I've seen a major difference in the behavior. But she would still have her little moments right before bed to put her pants on. And she would have like an hour long sometimes. And I cannot help her at all. The high expectation. Because after a while, oh, mommy helped me. Let me do this again. Let me have a tantrum again. Because I really don't want to do it. So now I'm having a tantrum for attention. And the attention part, mommy is helping me. Oh, well, I got this covered. I want to do this every single moment. So this is something that I really wanted to stress to the audience. High expectations, met, do not go back down. You start from the bottom for something else that they have not met. Once they have met, stop, go back down. This is still so it could be 5 things that your child is doing, they'll have done. And I'm not saying that one time, I'm talking about months after months. You realize, okay, she got down pat. But now, one day, she just maybe don't want to do it. You have to still have that high expectation. So 5 things that they have done, that have practiced for like 5 months, 6 months, do like, a long extended time. So 3 months, 6 months. And then after that, you have to have that still high expectation for your child. Everything else that has not been met, you're slowly but surely, you're helping them, you're guiding them, you're giving them, okay, now you try, type of thing. Okay, you tried, doing whatever, like I said, you're saying like drawing a circle. It took a long time to even hold a pencil.
Right.
Not long drawing. Right. And now she's an artist. Like she can do whatever. But then for me, it's like, if she asked me to do something, I'm like, okay, let's try. Remember that circle? Let's do this. So she'll look at a computer and draw what she sees on a computer from someone else. That's a high expectation. So then one day when she don't want to do whatever else, like the picture, she may want somebody to draw it for her. But she already learned how to draw a circle. You already learned how to do a triangle or whatever. So that's a high expectation. I will say, okay, how about you take a break and you try it again? And then she'll do it. But the high expectation is so important. Definitely.
So as he got older, he was able to notice this. He was able to notice what he could do versus what his friend could do. And he, believe that or not, was able to acknowledge that it's because he had been challenged and his friend had not been challenged. And he actually went, much to my embarrassment but pride, he went to the mother and he told her he thought she was going about things all wrong. And he proceeded to tell her how he thought that she should have done things differently, because of where he was versus where her child was. They went to quite an extent. They spent $65,000. They're a wealthy family. They spent $65,000 to hire a life coach to help teach him to be on his own. Whereas I didn't have $65,000. I couldn't hire any life coaches. I was the life coach. It was on me to teach my child these skills for living on his own.
It's interesting how you said that. I am actually a certified life coach now. I will not charge $65,000. But definitely. Okay, go ahead.
So, starting from when he was little all the way up, teaching him life skills and how to care
for himself. Life skills is so important.
And it would have been much easier to just do it all for him. That mom is right. It was much easier to have just put him in a cart and pushed him around the cart. But then would he learn how to walk around a grocery store? Yep, it was definitely easier if I would have just put clothes on him. But at 12 years old and him being a male and me being a female, I felt like it was disrespectful. I felt like it was inappropriate. And I felt like it took longer for him to dress himself, but I felt in the end it would be worth it. And
this is why parents, please, if it has to be, remember I said it's the self-care, okay, the self-care part, but as a parent, if you know about these transitionings that are like, okay, if first of all, if I wake up late and Jasmine has a therapy session at 10:30 and it's 10:15, I used to be like, come on. And what it did was it made her have anxiety. Of course, because you have 15 more minutes and then you have to do everything else. But then I have to make sure I get up earlier than 10:15. Because this is all Zoom stuff. Everyone is home. So it's so important for parents to shift their schedule for them, accommodate them versus them, as a minors, scheduling themselves to come how we that's not fair. And that's unreasonable. Like, they're minors. So we as parents have to be careful. If it takes them longer to do something, then you have to have available time for that. Because I'm telling you, if not, you're going to be stressed. You're going to be, and to the point, sometimes you might feel like, am I yelling? Yes, you will be yelling. Yes, you will be frustrated. Yes, you might have a meltdown. Yes, parents might have a meltdown because not based upon what they did, but because we didn't accommodate them.
Yep, you learn a lot of time management.
We didn't stretch our time for them. That's not fair for them.
Yes, so definitely had to learn about time management, about allowing more time and what things will make it easier. Maybe there's certain clothes that make it easier to put on or quicker to put on. Maybe it's the picking it out the night before and having it ready so that there wasn't that struggle in the morning when they were sleepy. Maybe it was trying to make sure they got enough sleep so that they wouldn't be too tired to cooperate and get dressed in the morning. things like that. Sometimes it's a matter of choices, giving choices. Yet last night that outfit might have been okay with them, but this morning that's not an outfit they choose to put on. And so sometimes it had to be
I do
outfit
have pictures
A.
of those choices of about clothes. I'm
Uh,
like, I would not wear that. But if that's the one that you want, Jasmine, go right ahead.
so we'd have outfit A and outfit B, and so that there was a choice still. So in the morning, if you didn't want outfit A that you chose, there is still outfit B. And just things, just trial and error, for sure. Every day was a struggle. I didn't have books to read on the subject. I didn't have conferences to go to. I didn't have Zoom things to watch. I didn't have teachers that could instruct me. It really was grassroots. Anyway, it was the grassroots for sure. Yeah, I'll jump a tiny bit ahead. I know we're totally out of time.
Yeah.
But my middle child, the one that I said was borderline, that had a lot of issues, maybe even more issues than autism, but didn't quite check all the boxes to be diagnosed with autism. Ended up being a behavioral technician for autism. She's 23. Can you believe that? Who would have thought? She's 23, and that is her job. And she is amazing at it. She is amazing at being able, and I say, that's so amazing that you.
I'm sorry. But
Sure.
was the one offline?
I'm sorry?
Was that the one offline?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, okay.
And she is amazing. And she, I asked her about how do you know all these things? You just seem so skilled at things when she doesn't have a degree. How do you know these things? And she said, I just watched you all those years raising my brother and my sister. I watched you doing that and I learned from that. And I was like, but I didn't know what I was doing. And she said, you did, because she did take classes, and she, was able to get this certificate to be a behavioral technician. And she said, what was amazing is, she said, a lot of the things they taught us, I already knew because I had watched you do those things and I had learned that. And I was like, but I didn't learn that. And she said, you learned it through trial and error. You learned it through, you did all those things and you figured it out. You figured out what works, what doesn't work, what you should do.
Works, you guys. Be consistent. Please be consistent. And you're like, okay, that's what I'm going to use again.
Right.
Oh, that worked out really well. Yeah.
Exactly. So when you're thinking your 12-year-old that can't draw a circle or ride a bike or tie their shoes, they're going to have a job. He's making over $20 an hour, which right now in the economy is amazing. And who would have thought that? There is nothing wrong with if you don't get to that level, because we all have our strengths and weaknesses. There are some, maybe somebody else is better socially. Maybe they're able to talk with people better than he can talk with people, or maybe they have different skills. So it's important not to have a comparison of, well, her child was able to hold a job full time, so mine should have to do that. No, not necessarily. It doesn't mean you can't have an expectation and try for it, but they might not get there, and that's okay, because they'll have other strengths and weaknesses. Like I said, he doesn't drive. My other two children do drive. We all have different strengths and weaknesses, and that's just not something that he mastered. I haven't given up. He's 30. He has a whole lifetime ahead of him. It could still happen. We don't know, but I don't just throw in the towel and say he'll never do it. I just keep on keeping on, and someday maybe that'll happen, and someday it won't. And if it won't, well, then we'll figure out some other way. How can he get around? What can he do for transportation? How can he be independent? And that was my goal for all of them, is how could they be independent? Not here's the goal you have to meet, but how do I help you to be independent? So that would be what I would encourage everyone is for independence. That's what you want for them, is independence. Happiness, of course, but also you want them to be independent. Doesn't matter if particular goals are not ever met, that doesn't matter. It's what's the highest level of independence. They may never be able to live on their own. They may live in a group home. They may live with you, that You may have to hire somebody to check in on them. There's all different sorts of living arrangements, and they're all great
Yeah.
because they got to that level. They went from point A to that level. And sometimes I'm hard on myself and I forget to realize and appreciate the level that they got to instead of thinking about what I wanted them to get to.
Mm.
That's dangerous to
Very
focus
dangerous.
on,
Yes.
to focus on what you wanted them to get to and feel like you or they were a failure. Oh, we weren't failures. This wasn't a failure. No part of this was a failure. We worked hard and we got to where we got to, and we'll still get further, and we didn't fail at anything. So that's important to tell yourself. So important.
Wow, wow. I told you guys I was ready for this. And I didn't know. We've talked all offline about some, topics or whatever, but definitely Lori, thank you.
Oh,
Thank you
you're
so much.
so welcome. I'm sorry
We,
I've run us over time. I do have
no.
so much, so
And we
much
were
more. I would love
we're
so
20
much
minutes,
more.
people say we're 20 minutes out, but that is okay because it was needed for someone. I don't know who you are, but definitely thank you, Lori, for that. So
Sure.
here
I hope we can do this again.
yes,
Because I have so much more, I would like to share that I think is encouraging. I think I talked a lot about the problems. I'd like to do some more encouraging. I
yes,
think that's important.
thank you so much.
So,
Yes, that will all be awesome. Okay, you guys. So here we go. We will have this discussion offline. We will get another date, a time. But I definitely heard about support. I've heard support, and I heard about never give up and don't look at someone else's journey and don't compare. Don't say, okay, my journey, my child's journey versus their. Everyone learns differently. Whether you have a child that has a diagnosis or not, everyone, we all do. And so we definitely need to be mindful of that. And parents, you're doing an awesome job. I definitely want to point into the support group. So I will post that as soon as we get offline about our support group on Wednesday. We also have a monthly Zoom call starting back in February on this awesome page. The meeting on Wednesday will not be on Learning with Jasmine page. Okay, this is not from Learning with Jasmine. It will be from another program that I actually work with. So I'm just letting you guys know where we are with that. But definitely, Lori and I will have that conversation. And until next time, you guys, tap into your child's strengths. Definitely tap into it, whatever it looks like. And being, I say, being motivated and being encouraged that you're doing an awesome job. Definitely doing an awesome job. And so it's always good to have this conversation, to be aware. For those who do not know about autism awareness or the autism or any other spectrum of that, I hope that you were putting your notes in and everything, and you can always replay this, you can share this. And until next time, you guys, be safe with this pandemic. And here's a little side note, you guys. It is okay to talk about this. It is okay, because not only will it help you, but it will encourage so much. And thank you, Lori. You have been an encouragement. You said so many things that I hope parents and teachers and doctors and everyone else will be aware that it is okay to even have those feelings, but definitely be an encouragement to one another. Thank you.
thank you for having this forum. Thank
you. All right, you guys, we will get off of here, but definitely, you guys, we will resume in February. And so until next time, have a good night, you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.